Welcome back. Today we will talk about Trump, war, and gold. What do these have in common? First of all, it's Trump here, Trump there, Trump everywhere. And all the media, the channels, people, it's all about Trump. He has monopolized the world's attention. And it's very interesting. The word Trump is to trump. When you play cards and you have a trump card, you override all the other cards. You have a kind of weapon that can be a color, it can be a suit, it can be a number. It has a power, and words have this power. That's why when you learn to spell, you are casting a spell. Words and verbal communication have magical powers. And people, it doesn't matter if they're good or bad, educated or not educated, but people who have the power of dialogue, people who have the power of rhetoric, they have a magic connection with the audience. It's a kind of hypnosis. And we can watch documentaries and videos of Mussolini, of Hitler, and probably Julius Caesar, if there were videos of Julius Caesar. And these people had the power of communication, the power of commanding the masses. And obviously, Trump has this capacity, and he's trumping everything, everybody, and everywhere. It doesn't mean it's good or bad. We have to understand what's going on. We have to transcend judgment and understand what's behind the curtain. We have to open the curtain and understand. So the real Trumpism is the power to capture everybody's attention, just like a magician in Las Vegas, an illusionist. You have this power and people get hypnotized and fixated and fascinated, and you grab their attention for as long as it lasts. We have the story of the emperor who had no clothes, but he imagined that he had wonderful, wonderful clothes, because the people who went to him and convinced him that the invisible things they were selling were clothes, wonderful, expensive clothes, and that he looked good, impeccable in these clothes, convinced him, and for some time he was spending fortunes on clothes that no one could see, but he was convinced by the salesman that they were fantastic clothes, until he went on a parade to show off to everybody. Look at my new clothes. How wonderful I look. Looking good. This is a concept which is embedded in narcissism and in Western civilization. Everybody wants to look good, like the mafia dons. Okay? And Trump is very, very involved in materialism, in media, in convincing people that he's looking good, not about being good. So when the emperor went on a parade and people started commenting, what's going on, what's going on? And everybody found out at that moment that he was a total idiot or totally crazy, and that he was totally naked. He had nothing. And they threw rotten eggs and tomatoes and everything on him. And he had to run away and hide. So they say, you can run, but you can't hide. So when people see who you really are and what is really going on, the mask is taken out and you see what is really going on. However, people have a short memory. So if you walk around Italy today, nobody remembers about Mussolini and nobody remembers what happened during the 10 to 20 years that Mussolini was in power, the horrors that were perpetrated in Italy, the invasion of Ethiopia and Libya, which were total disasters, and his involvement with Hitler and Nazism. People forget. But the doomsday, the D-Day will come. People will realize that they have been fooled, taken for a ride, that they have succumbed to mirages, illusions. They have been seduced by words and communication, but there's nothing inside. And there's the story of the flutist who took all the kids into the ocean because the mayor of the town didn't want to pay him. He arrived there because they had a problem with rats. And he said, okay, I'll get rid of the rats for you. So he took the rats and got rid of them into the ocean. When they didn't want to pay him for what he had done, so he took the kids, played his music, and they disappeared. So we have to be very careful with this concept of there's a problem, oh my God, we have a problem, and the person comes as the great savior. I have come to save you. And you give a lot of power to this person because of your desperation, because of your panic, because you are incapable of solving your own problems. As I have commented, Rome was a mess. There were gangs, prostitutes, rapes and murders and all kinds of horrors. It was dirty and people were fed up. So when Caesar came along and said, I will be your emperor, I will solve all your problems, I will fill you with gold. And he invaded the Gauls and the Goths, villages of 3,000-4,000 people with 10,000 legionnaires, and took them as slaves and took their gold and silver and threw it to the people. And the people said, wow, he's a great man. And then he became their emperor and won their vote. And then it was war, and his escapades with Cleopatra, and war in the north, war in the south, war in the west, war in the east, until the people in the Senate realized that he was just a con man. It was a Ponzi scheme. The whole idea of empire, and I will be your emperor, but I will decide everything. I will have the only voice, and I will have the only vote. So they ended up killing him. All his trusted confidence knifed him. So this story is a story about fake saviors. And when the children are in panic, the savior comes and takes advantage of their innocence, of their hopelessness, helplessness, and uselessness. And this has happened again and again. It was the same thing in Germany with Hitler. They had 100% of inflation, no bread, no food. It was total misery. After the First World War, the Germans lived in 20 years of misery. And then Hitler came along and told them, you are the greatest people on earth. You're the Aryan race. And they gave him all the power to do what he later did. And according to most people, hundreds of millions of people died in the Second World War, during the Holocaust and after. And when you had the revenge killings, the Germanic people basically were cut in half, the population, because all over Europe they were murdered as revenge for the horrors that they did over 20 years. just during Hitler's era. So a person can come to power, it doesn't mean anything. A person can have all the powers of communication and uniforms and boots and win wars in the beginning. Because in the end, they lose everything. Mussolini lost everything and ended up being kicked in the streets. Hitler lost everything, and we all know what happened later on. Most of his Nazi officials were murdered. The families committed suicide. The mothers killed their own children. It was a horror show. So in the beginning, when you're winning wars because you have more guns than everybody else and you have better uniforms, it doesn't mean anything. Where exactly are you going? What is the cost? And if you have everybody against you and realizing that you are the cause of all that is wrong, just like the Roman Senate realized Caesar is the cause of all problems, then it's very difficult to show your face. And it's very, very risky. Because everybody who's around you, your family members, your associates, are involved in everything that is being done. So to trump is a kind of power. You have a trump card. You are a trump. But you have to be careful because it gives you power. So when people have trump cards, they start overspending, over taking too many risks. They think that they're so good because they have a trump card that they can play at poker at any level. They can play any game with anyone. So a trump card, Trumpism, gives you a narcissistic ego trip. It's like a drug. You feel that I can do everything. I'm everybody. I'm above everybody. I'm not a king. I'm the emperor of the world. So we have to understand this is a problem. And it's a problem that is basically a European problem and a problem of the Middle East, where you have the tough guys, where you have the strong men, the leaders, and they believe that they're God on earth and they can do anything and they're above the law. And all of these have ended terribly. We can talk about Gaddafi, we can talk about Saddam Hussein, we can talk about Mubarak, and many, many more. There's the baby dog, Papa Dog family of Haiti. We have Pablo Escobar and his 15 years of megalomania. And there's so many examples over history. And one of the reasons that I have my channel is to help people remember. Because when you are fixated and fascinated and the media is everywhere, and then you have sports and sports betting and the Champions League and whatever, the NBA, you forget about history. You forget about events. You forget about the lessons that we should be learning from history. One of the main concepts of project management, which I have helped many people to learn, is lessons learned. You cannot begin a project without having your lessons learned from the past, so that you not repeat these mistakes and you can move on. So lessons learned is very, very important. And one of my ideas is to open the pages and go back over time to the principal lessons that people should learn. History lessons, cultural lessons, personal lessons. We should have this capacity of going back and creating a map of our life, of our family life, of our country's history, and see what we have been through. Europe, they had 50 years from 1900 to 1950 of horrors. The First World War, revolutions, the Holocaust, the Second World War, and then they had another 50 years of the Cold War, where they were dragged all over the world, and then before that, they were dragged as imperialists racists colonizing Africa, Australia, South America, and dying abroad. Out of every 10 ships that sailed out of Europe, 9 disappeared. Millions and millions and millions of young Europeans have been killed, being sent abroad to Vietnam, to whatever, and never coming back. And when some come back, they're war veterans and commit horrible crimes because they've been through hell. They've been through hell. So this is the part about the concept of Trumpism. Then we have the concept of war. But Trump is not just war. Okay? It's a concept that you can override anything. It's an overriding factor, a trump card. War is very, very profound. The Chinese Sun Tzu wrote treatise on the art of war. After the Chinese had had around 1,000 years of non-stop war with the Huns, the great and mighty Huns, the warriors of the steppes, having been brought up between wolves and bears and misery and non-stop violence. These Huns were very, very powerful people. And the Chinese not only survived 1,000 years of wars with Huns, they were able to learn the art of war. And Sun Tzu summarized all of these teachings and created a nation resistant. And that is surviving until today. So when you think that you can outsmart the Chinese, you have to remember that they survived 1,000 years of non-stop war with the Huns, and then 500 years of non-stop war with the Mongols. And for some time, the Mongols colonized China, and then they were defeated. So you can never, and you should never, subestimate cultures and civilizations that have survived, that have been here for millennia. And millennia in the case of Chinese is over 5,000 years. And there are many inventions that the Chinese are responsible for. The globe, longitude, latitude, the printing press. There's so much more. You should never estimate the technological capacity of a culture that has created so much wealth and so much technology. So what China is doing today with Huawei, for example, DeepSeek, is nothing new. They have been at the forefront of technology for millennia. So we should study and learn a little bit about other people and not turn a blind eye. So you appreciate and understand and respect who you are dealing with. In the same way, India is not about war, but they survived 2,000 years of non-stop invasions. They were invaded by the Huns, the Scythians, the Mongols, the Turks, and then the Europeans. They suffered 2,000 years of non-stop invasions and they survived. They survived because of togetherness, because of their brotherhood, the great families that take care of the young ones. And they look after the old ones and learn the lessons and listen to the stories. And they prepare their young people. They educate the young people. They get them working at home and then everywhere. And then they spread all over the world. We have Indians from Fiji to Trinidad and Tobago, from South Africa, Durban, to all over Europe. And in America, they're very, very well established. So we should never underestimate Indians and Chinese. War strengthens you. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So people who have suffered climatic war, we should respect. Desertification has made Middle Eastern people and African people, very, very resistant. So, when we talk about Africa, we are talking about 2 billion people. When we talk about Muslims, we are talking about 2 billion people. It's not a joke. You do not want to antagonize them. They are survivors of probably 3,000 to 4,000 years of desertification and 3,000 to 4,000 years of non-stop wars. And they have become hardened. They are survivors. So, when we talk about war, it's not just invasion. Invasion is one part of war. The other aspect of war is survival. It teaches you how to survive, how to stay united, how to learn, lessons learned, and how to prepare for the future. Because fighting for the future is the biggest war. You have to survive. And there's no point surviving and divorced and people are drug addicts and everybody is in debt. Surviving as a group. This is survival. Surviving as a group. When we think of gold, we think about Fort Knox, where for 50 years nobody has been able to fiscalize and really know if there's any gold at all in Fort Knox, that the American government says that there's a lot of gold there. There's no way of finding out. But in any case, gold is a base. It's a solid foundation. You don't have to have money because of inflation, money becomes debased. But gold is always gold. And when times get hard, gold goes up, up, up. And if you have the gold, you trade the gold for whatever you want. So when we talk about gold, we are talking about the most powerful trading item, trading commodity. In maybe 5 years, 10 years, black gold, petroleum will not be so important. But gold will still be very important. And that is why countries, especially the BRIC leaders, Russia, China, India, and today the African nations, where most of the gold of the world is produced, are buying gold. And buying gold means that they're not buying dollars because they don't trust the United States and Europe anymore. Because of so many assassinations, so many coups d'etats, so much interference. So the global south is accumulating gold. And the trade that they're doing amongst themselves is based on gold as a foundation, as a security. And just for people to know, today with high technology, especially Chinese, very, very high technology, they have discovered several of the major gold deposits of the world in Uganda, in China, in the center of India, in Brazil. Fantastic deposits of gold. So this is where geologically we have the gold belt. They were all together. South America, Africa, India, Australia were all together. This is the gold belt. There's still a lot of gold to be mined, to be found. So these countries where you have gold and who are using technology to find gold, and now most of them have got their gold back from the European and American banks, and they're asking for whatever's left to be returned. These countries will become very, very powerful and independent in the future because they have gold. So, we talked about Trump overriding factor. We talked about war making you strong, and everything is war. You have the climate war. You have a population war. Today, the old people in places like Europe and China and Japan are over 50%. So they have a demographic war. They have to find young people. They need young people. There's a war for young people. So if, like in the United States, they don't want foreigners, they are getting older and losing out on who's getting the young people. Just to finalize this video, American universities are collapsing. Many of them are collapsing. Not just because the Trump government is cutting the financing of the universities. The Chinese students have basically left or been kicked out. The Indian students are fed up of being bullied. There's a lot of racism and envy against Indian students. They're leaving. And other nations cannot get a visa to the United States. So it's very difficult for Africans and many Latin Americans to come to the United States to study. They don't have scholarships. The governments don't help them. And so there is an out-migration from the United States and Europe of young people, of students who 50 years ago, 30 years ago, studied and stayed there and collaborated in Silicon Valley, in London and Paris. And these young migrants are returning to their countries or moving to places like Thailand, like India, like China, who are opening universities and giving scholarships to people from the global south. So we should value young people. We should value scholarships to young people, because these young people then become productive and pay taxes and open startups and companies and create wealth and value. And with this, the Western governments can pay pensions to the elderly, because the pensions have been delayed in the age of 60 to 62 to 65 and maybe to 70. So there is a problem that the pension scheme is becoming very dangerous and is not being paid. And now many European countries are saying that if you receive our pension, you cannot go and live in Thailand or in Mexico or in Costa Rica or in Paraguay. So we have a lot of problems in the future. So we should be open to young people, open to education, give them scholarships. And so we are talking about Trump, war, gold. But the real gold are young people, educated people, good people, nice people. People who are willing to study and open companies and pay taxes and not get involved in money laundering, in drug scams, and in warmongering. So, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this session and connect these videos with my last videos. It's about sharing with you better perspectives. The more perspectives you have, the richer you are. The more mature opinion you have of things, analysis, the better decisions you can take. The more you understand what's really happening behind the curtain, under the table. So my whole idea and my videos and my channel is about sharing richer perspectives, sharing philosophical, historical, cultural perspectives, so people can get smarter and can get better and live a very intelligent life. So you avoid catastrophes, you avoid being the wrong person with the wrong person, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, doing the wrong things and blaming everybody all the time. Thank you for watching.